Hello students, this is Ryan Pinto from Possible IAS. Today's lecture is on Revolt of 1857. The last lecture that we did, or we covered the 18th century India, and today we are going to cover the Revolt of 1857. So we know 18th century India was not a dark age as was said by some historians to justify the British rule. Today, what is the revolt of 1857? What are the causes? What is the impact? And how do historians look at 1857 revolt? Okay, so let's see the 1857 revolt. Now, revolt of 1857 is a very important milestone or benchmark in Indian history. This revolt of 1857 became, you can say, an inspiration to the future Indian national movement, and till today we consider revolt of 1857 as a landmark in Indian history and making India as we have seen today. So, revolt of 1857 is very important in our Indian history, and it is considered to be one of the most important incident which took place in Indian national struggle and for India to become a nation. You must remember during 1857 India was not there was nothing called as India. There was no country as such, but it was just a geographical expression in 1857, and the Britishers were trying to consolidate their power, and the Mughals were on their decline, and there was rise of the smaller states like Marathas, which was checked by the British. So you must just remember this is the political situation going on during the 1857. Okay, let's see what exactly revolt of 1857 is, and let's see how we can understand it. The record of East India Company had been of ever increasing conquest and commercial exploitation. So East India Company is always focused on was always focused on conquest and commercial exploitation. They were not in India to do social welfare or to give us administration or give us good transport. No, they were for conquest so that they can earn, they can exploit India commercially. The cumulative effect of British expansionist policies, so they were expansionist, economic exploitation, they economically exploited us, and administrative innovation of over the years had adversely affected the position of all the rulers. Okay, so you must remember what the British were doing was expansion, economic exploitation, and administrative innovation. Now, administrative innovation was not for the sake of welfare, but for their personal gains. So you must always see in Indian history there was British self-interest. So you must remember this, that there is always self-interest of the British which was there. So on whatever they did, they introduced railways, telegraph, postage, and any other, whatever they did, there was a self-interest in the British actions. And this affected the rulers of Indian states, sepoys, zamindars, traders, pandits, maulvis, peasants, etc. So these were the people who were affected by the British actions. The resentment of the Indians had found expression in the number of mutinies. So you must remember the first thing. This was not the first revolt. There were many mutinies or reaction against the British. It was during, example was 1806 Vellore mutiny, at Barakpur 1824, Firozpur 1842, followed by mutiny of 7th Bengal Cavalry and 64th Regiment. So you must understand that this was 1857 revolt was not the first revolt. There were mutinies before this revolt. So just remember this. Okay, it was in Vellore, Barakpur, Firozpur, and 7th Bengal Cavalry as well as 64th Regiment. Now, what is the nature and character of the revolt? How was the revolt? Was it a revolt by the sepoys? Was it a revolt by the people? Was it a fight between Christians and non-Christians? Was it fight between civilization? This is the nature. Now, who has given these views? It is given by the various historians. So let's see the various historians. What do they tell about the revolt of 1857? For them, what is 1857 and its revolt? The nature and character of the revolt. Historians have divergent views about the nature of the outbreak of the revolt of 1857. So the views are very divergent. British historians like Kay, Mallison, Trevelyan, Lawrence, Holmes have painted it as mutiny confined to the army. So the British historians are biased. So you must understand. They tell that the revolt of 1857 was only by the sepoys. It's the sepoys who wanted power, not the people. But we know that was not the case. Okay, they say that K. Mallison, Trevelyan, and Lawrence, they say that it was a mutiny confined to the army, which did not command the support of the large number of people. A similar view was held by some Indians also kept this view, like Jeevan Lal and Moinuddin. Others described it as war against Christians or racial struggle for supremacy. So these are the views. Let's see in detail what are the views. Some of the views are Sir John Lawrence and Seeley. What did they say? They thought it to be a sepoy mutiny and nothing else. As I just told you, some British historians are saying that it's just a sepoy mutiny. There was no public support. But you must understand that the Britishers were exploiting each and every section of the society, and there was public support, and that we're going to see how did this view come into picture. But Sir John Lawrence and Seeley said it was just a sepoy mutiny. So remember these names. It can come in pre-exam on which historians gave what view. So Sir John Lawrence and Seeley gave the views on sepoy mutiny. Okay. L.E. Rees said the revolt was over of religious fanatic against the Christians. Okay. So L.E. Rees. So as we know, Sir John Lawrence and Seeley, you should also know L.E. Rees. He says the revolt was by the religious fanatics, okay, against the Christians. It is non-Muslims, non-Christians versus the Christians. So remember this. Some like J.G. Medley pointed out that the revolt of 1857 was between the blacks and whites. Okay, so Sir John Lawrence and Seeley says that it's sepoy mutiny. L.E. Rees says that Christians versus non-Christians. J.G. Medley says that its revolt was between whites and blacks. T.R. Holmes popularized the views that revolt of 1857 was between civilization and barbarianism. So it is barbarianism. So they considered themselves as civilized, and Indians were considered as barbarians. So who didn't have civilization, who didn't have anything. So this is what is the view of T.R. Holmes. Sir James Outram and W. Taylor describes the outbreak as a result of Hindu-Muslim conspiracy. Again, religion was brought in. Benjamin Disraeli. Okay, so you must remember it's Benjamin Disraeli. Conservative leader in England described it as national rising. He contended that the so-called mutiny was not sudden, was no sudden impulse, but was careful result of careful combination, vigilant and well organized. So he said, Benjamin Disraeli said it was planned. Okay, so you must remember what are these British historians saying. So Sir John Lawrence and Saley is saying that it is Sepoy mutiny. L.E. Rees says that it is revolt against the Christians. J.G. Medley talks about whites versus blacks. And T.R. Holmes says it is civilization against barbarianism. Sir James Outram is talking about Hindu-Muslim conspiracy, and Disraeli says it is planned. So they were all trying to beleaguer or make revolt of 1857 and its participation very insignificant. That is why they gave all these views, because they didn't want to let the people know that it was because of the mass problems that British was creating. So these views was in that context. So if it comes in mains, they might give you a view and they might tell you to comment on it. So you should comment both the positives as well as the negatives. Okay. Now, nationalist leaders looking for ideals to arouse national consciousness among the people reinterpreted the uprising of 1857. Now, when the Britishers were talking or were telling that the revolt of 1857 was just a sepoy mutiny or Christian versus Muslims, non-Christians, and organized and by some section, nationalist leaders tried to reinterpret the views of on 1857. What did the nationalist leaders say? V.D. Savarkar, he took the lead. What did he say? In the book Indian War of Independence, published in London, described it as planned war of national independence and previous revolts were just a rehearsal. So V.D. Savarkar, remember V.D. Savarkar, okay? He has written a book on Indian War of Independence, and in this book he said it was planned war of national independence, and the revolts before that, just we saw Vellore and Barakpur and uh, all these revolts that we saw, they were just a rehearsal. What does R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen say? Okay, so just you have to remember these two historians. So V.D. Savarkar we have seen, now R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen. Recently, Dr. R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen have made an exhaustive study. Both scholars agree that uprising of 1857 was not the result of careful planning. They say it was not careful planning. Okay, like what British historians say, it was very well carefully planned. Like Disraeli said, it was carefully planned and it was to throw over the British rule. But R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen say it was not careful planning. No one was there. There were no masterminds behind it. No masterminds. Dr. Majumdar concludes that there is nothing in the conduct or behavior of the sepoys which would justify us in the belief or even assumption that they were inspired by the love of their country or fought against the British with a definite idea of free India motherland. As I had told you earlier also, there was nothing called as India as a country in the 18th century as well as in the early 19th century. Okay, India became a country after 1947. Okay, 1885 you must remember, formation of INC was when India became nation in the making. But before this, India was just a geographical expression. So what does Majumdar say? In 1857, they were not fighting for independence, or there was no love for their country against the British. Okay, but he maintains that the result was indirect. Though they did not fight for their country or there was no love for the country, but there was a indirect national importance. This was seen later when 1857 proved to be an inspiration for Indian national movement. So the result became indirect, that this 1857, though not for Indian independence, but later became an inspiration for Indian independence. So it became a inspiration. Now this is what is said by R.C. Majumdar. What does R.C. Majumdar say? It was an indirect, of indirect national importance. Now let's see what Dr. S.N. Sen says. He believes that rising of 1857 was the war of independence. R.C. Majumdar does not call it as a war of independence, but SN says that it was a war of independence. But what does he tell in this? He tells that it was the work of a few people without active sympathy of masses. So these two things are different. So R.C. Majumdar denies war of Indian independence, whereas SN says approves the war of independence. But few people, you must remember, he says few people were active. He says that the revolt cannot be invested with national character, because a few people, as SN said, it's only few people, then how can we give it as a picture of a national character? He says what began as a fight for religion ended as a war of independence. We are going to see the causes, and we are going to see how religion played a role in revolt of 1857. So he says it began as a fight for religion and it ended as a war of independence. For there is not a slightest doubt that rebels wanted to get rid of the alien government and restore old order, of which the king of Delhi was the rightful representative. He says that it started as a fight for religion, but later they wanted to throw the sepoys wanted to throw away the British so that they can get independence. Okay, and finally S.B. Chaudhary, Dr. S.B. Chaudhary maintains that revolt can be broken into mutiny and rebellion. A mutiny is done by the soldiers, okay, and rebellion. Thus there was a military and civilian strand of the rebellion. And finally, Marxist interpretation of revolt says that it was struggle of the soldier, peasant, democratic combined against foreign and feudal bondage. So the Marxist will always see it from the eyes of class fights. Okay, so they said soldiers, peasants came together to throw over the foreign and feudal bondage. And the most important, Jawaharlal Nehru wrote in his Discovery of India, it was a feudal outburst headed by feudal chiefs and their followers and aided by widespread anti-foreign sentiment. Okay, so he puts focus on the feudal elements. Who were the feudal elements over here? They were the zamindars, talukdars, princes, and moneylenders who fought against the British, and they were supported by the anti-foreign sentiment. So just a fast review. So you must remember the British historians said that the nature was like Sir John Lawrence and Seeley saying it was a sepoy mutiny. L.E.R. Rees says that it is fight versus Christians and the non-Christians. J.G. Medley says it is black and white fighting. T.R. Holmes says it is civilization versus barbarianism. James Outram and W. Taylor says that is Hindu-Muslim conspiracy. Disraeli tells that or explains that it is planned. What do our national leaders say? V.D. Savarkar calls it as a planned war of national independence. R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen, their views are very important. R.C. Majumdar denies it as a war of Indian independence, but he says it had indirect importance. Essence calls it as a war of independence. Okay, but he says it started as a religious fight, but later turned into war of independence. Finally, S.B. Chaudhary, he divides the mutiny or revolt in two. The one is mutiny and second is rebellion. Marxist interpretation is feudal bondage versus the soldiers, peasants, etc. And the most important, Jawaharlal Nehru, he says that revolt of 1857 was feudal elements fighting against the foreigners. Now let's see what are the causes of the revolt. We just saw the nature of the revolt. Let's see the causes of the revolt. East India Company's policy of effective control and gradual extension of Indian natives states from subsidiary alliance of Wellesley to doctrine of lapse of Dalhousie. So the first cause is the Indian native states. So the Indian native states were the Rajputs, there was the Marathas, there was the Jats, the Bundelas, the Sikhs. These were all the Indian native states. And what did the British do? They tried to capture these states, destroy these states. How? It's by subsidiary alliance during the time of Wellesley to doctrine of lapse by Dalhousie. So remember these two names, Wellesley and Dalhousie. So it's from 1796 or 99 you can say to 1856. So Wellesley one was in 1799, 96 to 99, and 1856 was Dalhousie. So these two, from here 1799 to 1856, they followed a policy wherein they were trying to subjugate the Indian states. In the doctrine of lapse, the right of succession was denied to the Hindu princes. Okay, before doctrine of lapse came, any ruler who wanted to adopt a son, if he didn't have a son, so that he can give the empire to that son, could do it without anyone's permission. But after 1856, in the doctrine of lapse, the British, it was compulsory to take the permission of the British if a king did not have a son and wanted to adopt. So this was like interfering in the native prince's authority. The guarantee of adoption to the throne did not extend to any person in whose veins the blood of the founder of the dynasty did not run. So if there was an adopted son, then it was on the British if he could continue as a ruler. Okay, so just remember this. And this was a problem. Doctrine of lapse was a problem because of which the Rani of Jhansi and Begum Hazrat Mahal of Awadh, Lucknow, they came in They came in and fought against the British in 1857. So remember, doctrine of lapse. Doctrine of lapse. So remember this. Now, which are the states which were annexed by the British? It was Punjab, Pegu, Sikkim had been annexed by right of conquest. So such questions can be asked in UPSC. Which was the states which were annexed by the right of conquest? It was Punjab, Pegu, which is in Myanmar, and Sikkim. And by doctrine of lapse, it is Satara, Sambhalpur, Jaipur, Baghat, Udaipur, Jhansi, and Nagpur. Okay, so remember Satara, Sambhalpur, you have Jaipur, Baghat, and Udaipur, Jhansi, and Nagpur. And we know Jhansi, the Rani, fought valiantly against the British. Awadh was annexed on the pretext of good of the governed. So question again in UPSC, they'll give you a place like Punjab and they'll ask you how was it conquered or annexed? Was it by right of conquest? Was it by doctrine of lapse or good of the governed? Okay, so you must remember the reasons and the states. Okay, Awadh is by the good of the governed. Regal titles of Nawab of Carnatic and Tanjore were abolished. Okay, so Carnatic was in the east of the peninsula, that is in eastern India, as well as Tanjore. Their titles, the rulers, their titles was abolished. Peshwa pensions of Peshwa Bajirao to son, that is you must just remember Peshwa Nana Sahib, his Nana Sahib Peshwa's pension was stopped by the British. The Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II was an old man. So when we were doing 18th century, I told you there are going to be two Bahadur Shah. This Bahadur Shah is, this emperor's name is Bahadur Shah Zafar or Bahadur Shah II. He was an old man, and Prince Fakhruddin succession was recognized but imposed many restrictions. And it was said that after Fakhruddin death, Lord Canning announced that the next prince in succession would have to renounce the regal title. So let's see the causes, how they are annexing the Indian states, that is the native princely states. First is by doctrine of lapse, then is by right of conquest, then you have good of the governed, on the pretext of good of the governed, and the Mughals are just being thrown out. Okay, so this was the first reason because of which the soldiers took part in the, or the emperors or the princes took part in the 1857 revolt. The second reason is absentee sovereignty. Okay, now what is this absentee sovereignty? The earlier rulers who ruled over India settled in India and became Indians. So we have seen the rulers before Mughals who came to India, the Sultanate, the Mughals, they came to India and they settled here. But the British came here to leave India. They only wanted the revenue, money and power. The revenue collected was spent in this country. In case of British, what were the British doing? The Indians felt that they were being ruled from England and their wealth was drained away. So the British were not here to stay. The British were here to take the money. So second is absentee sovereignty. Third is there was also the Pindaris, the thugs, the irregular soldiers who formed bulk of the native army. And because of the British, they became unemployed. Now when in the above 2 points I had told you, the native princes were all taken away or subjugated or annexed by the British. There was some section who was getting unemployed. They were the Pindaris. Now what are Pindaris? They are like a band of say robbers or mercenaries who followed the Maratha Empire or the Maratha army. Whenever the Marathas attacked and they left, that area was next attacked by the Pindaris and they were robbed and their things were taken. And so you must remember the Pindaris are like the small force which is attached to the big army, and this force is to exploit. Okay, so there was also the Pindaris. They were also unemployed because of the British. The thugs who were somewhat like the Pindaris, irregular soldiers who formed bulk of the native army. So all these people were unemployed because of the British annexing the native Indian states, and the native Indian states were annexed on the pretext of doctrine of lapse, right of conquest, and then good of the governed, etc. So this is the political reasons. Let's see the administrative and economic reasons. The Indian aristocracy was deprived of power and position. So we have seen the Indian native states are all being thrown out, and now let's see the situation of the Indian aristocracy. Now aristocracy is the upper class Indians, the moneyed class, the powerful class. They were deprived of power and position. In military services, the highest post attainable by an Indian was the Subedar, and salary was just 60 and 70 rupees. And in civil service, Sadr Amin, the rupees salary was 500 rupees. So they had put us, or they had put the Indians in lower post. They did not give them higher post. So you just remember low post. The administrative machinery of East India Company was insufficient and inefficient. So the administration was inefficient and insufficient. Land revenue policy was unpopular. Many talukdars and hereditary landlords were deprived of their positions and gains. Estates were confiscated and sold by auction. So the talukdars and the landlords were, their estates, their position was taken away. Estates were confiscated and sold by auction. These were purchased by speculators who did not understand the tenants and fully exploited them. So the estates of these talukdars and landlords, they were taken away and sold by auction. So the old talukdars and landlords left the land and it was taken now by new powerful class which exploited the peasants. The land revenue thus brought poverty in aristocracy without benefiting the peasants. So both the aristocrats as well as the peasants both suffered in this case. Okay, the farmers fell in the clutches of the moneylenders. The talukdars of Awadh were the hardest hit. So first we saw the political reasons. Now we are seeing the administrative reasons. In the administrative reasons, we were given low post. The second point is poverty and exploitation. Exploitation and poverty of not only the peasants but also the landed class, that is talukdars and moneylenders. British economic policies work against the Indians in industries, trade and commerce. The East India Company used its political power to destroy. So now we are focusing on the trade and commerce. The East India Company used their political power to destroy the Indian handicrafts and industry and made India market of finished goods and raw material. So we were considered as market of finished goods and source of raw material. So you must just remember this. Trade and commerce was destroyed. So they gave us low post. Poverty and exploitation was done not only on the zamindars but also peasants, and they made us market of finished goods and source of raw materials. When we were doing 18th century, I had explained to you that we were benefiting with the exports, but now we just had, we were more focused on the imports. This led to pressure on agricultural, because of destruction of trade and commerce and industries. It led to the pressure on agricultural and land. This is what we can see. It led to the pauperization of the country in general. So there was poverty, there was pressure on agriculture. So just remember, there was pressure on agriculture which led to poverty. Why is this pressure? Because trade and commerce and industries are destroyed. So this is the administrative causes. So we saw the political causes where we discussed about the doctrine of lapse and Indian native states being taken away. We saw the economic causes where trade and commerce is destroyed, there is no administration. Now we are going to see the social and religious causes. The English were infected with spirit of racialism. Okay, so you must remember they were very racist. The rulers followed the policy of contempt towards Indians and described the Hindus and Muslims as barbarians. They called the Hindus and Muslims as barbarians with hardly any trace of truth and of culture and civilization. The European juries could alone try cases acquitted European criminals with light or no punishment. Since this is the policy under racism, where the jury were allowed to do inequality with the Indians. One of the aims of English in India was to convert the Indians to Christianity. This is again a religious cause. So to convert the Indians to Christianity can be seen in the British official speeches. So it is, how can we prove that they were trying to convert Indians to Christianity? It is seen in their British official speeches. Idolatry was denounced and Hinduism and Islam was attacked by the British of being orthodox, superstitious and ritualistic. So first we saw the political reasons, then we saw administrative reasons. Now we are seeing social and religious reasons. And in social and religious reasons we are seeing the racism which they followed, not only in the culture or not only in the education, but also in the jurisprudence, or you can say in law and order, as well as the religion that they were propagating. It was to convert the Indians to Christianity, and the reason they felt is, and they did because they first attacked the Indians for being idolatry. Okay, staying with the religious reasons, there was the Religious Disabilities Act 1856, which was made. Okay, now what did this Religious Disabilities Act 1856 say? This is an important point. It modified the Hindu customs and change of religion. Okay, it modified the Hindu customs. It allowed the change of religion, and it did not debar a son from inheriting property of his father. Just remember this. Okay, that before 1856, if someone changes or converts to another religion, they cannot inherit the property of the father. But after 1856, in the Disabilities Act, change of religion, if you change your religion, you can also inherit the property of your father. Before 1856, it was not allowed. The Indian mind was getting increasingly convinced that English were inspiring to convert them into Christianity. Interference in social activities like sati, widow remarriage and education of girls, as well as the other steps were taken, was seen as interference by the Indians. In social and religious, you must understand. So what did the British do in the social and religious causes? They were very racist. They attacked Indian religions. Religious Disabilities Act was brought, which did not debar the son from the father's property if he converts, and they considered interference in sati, widow remarriage and education as interference in Indian tradition and culture. So these were the socio-religious reasons. So we saw the political reasons, we saw the administrative reasons, and the social and cultural religious reasons. Now let's see the military causes. This is very important because the first who fought against the British in 1857 were the sepoys. Now, why is this so? Why did the sepoys take part in the soldiers take part in the revolt, or they started the revolt? Soldiers were actually peasant in uniform. So all the points that we saw before, that is the economic, administrative, socio-religious, this also affected the soldiers. So this is the first one. Families of sepoys suffered tax and other issues. Army maintained chaplains for conversion. So this is the social and religious. Social is tax, or economic is tax was very high. Conversions was taking place. Indian society was caste based and British violated it. They said you wear caste marks. This also hurt the sentiments of the Indians. 1856 Act was passed under which new recruits to serve overseas. So in 1856 one act was passed under which the British or soldiers that they should be ready to serve overseas. It was a taboo. It was considered bad for a person to cross overseas, and they were not accepted in the society once a person has served overseas in the military. But after 1856, it was compulsory. That is why the sepoys must have revolted. Bhatta. This was a foreign allowance. This was stopped in Sindh and other areas of the continent. Okay, so Indians were put in the Sindh and other areas of continent, which was considered foreign initially, and they were given back, but this was stopped. The privilege of free postage was also withdrawn in 1854. So what was the reason? Question is asked, why did the sepoys take charge or fought with the British? First is they suffered, they were peasants in uniform and they suffered the tax and other issues faced by their family or the peasants. Conversion was an issue. Indian society was caste based and the British was not allowed to wear caste marks. The British did not allow them to wear caste marks. 1856 they were compulsory made to serve overseas. Bhatta was not given if foreign, like that was a foreign allowance, and free postage was not given. So these were the causes. So we saw the political causes, which is doctrine of lapse and subsidiary alliance. Then we saw the administrative and economic causes: low post, poverty, inequality, exploitation. India was made a market of raw materials and market of finished goods and source of raw material. Social and religious causes: racism and Religious Disabilities Act, where a son could inherit the property if he converted, even if he converted. And finally, military causes, that is, soldier was a sepoy in uniform, peasant in uniform. Army was maintained chaplains for conversions. Indian society was caste based and the British said not to wear caste marks. 1856 Act was passed wherein it was compulsory for the soldiers to work outside India or it was recruited outside India. Bhatta was stopped and finally free postage was stopped. Now what is the immediate cause? Cartridge did not create a new cause of discontent in the army, but supplied the occasion when the underground discontent came out in the open. So the immediate cause was the greased cartridge. Okay, as we had seen, there was religious conversions going on. The British were attacking the Indian culture, Indian religion, and the people felt that they were trying to convert. The soldiers felt that the British were trying to convert. Now, this incident of the greased cartridge acted as a fuel in the fire. What was it? In 1856, government decided to replace the old-fashioned musket brown bess by the Enfield rifle. So this is a fact that you should learn by heart. So the British government said, we'll stop the brown bess, which is a musket, which is a big gun, and replace it by the Enfield rifle. So remember, the rifle name is Enfield rifle. The loading process of Enfield rifle, how to load the Enfield rifle, involved bringing the cartridge to the mouth. So you have to bring the cartridge to the mouth, open it, and then load in the rifle. Now this cartridge was made by this greased cartridge was made by fat of pigs and cows. Okay, so how to load the cartridge? There was a bullet, there was a case in it. Okay, you have to bring the cartridge on the mount, bite it open and put it in the rifle. Now this cartridge was made by greased by the fat of pigs and cows.